All right, looks like we are live. Hello, everybody. Chuck Holton here. It has been a crazy few days. It's been a crazy 24 hours for sure. And I don't even know where to start. Do we have a ceasefire or not? I don't know. I am kind of tempted to start quoting movie one-liners from The Princess Bride. I do not think that word means what you think it means, because it's just like President Trump kind of unilaterally announced a ceasefire, and then it appeared that it was agreed to, and then it wasn't agreed to, and then everybody just started bombing each other. So we're going to go through the timeline here and just see what's going on. But I just wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor today, which is Preserve Gold. I'm going to talk more about them in a minute, but you can go to preservegold.com, or you can just text 50505 I'm sorry, text the word Chuck to 50505 and find out more about Preserve Gold. I'll talk more about them in a minute. But suffice it to say, it's been a crazy 24 hours. I mean, just crazy. Uh, I again, it's hard to know where to start. So I guess the last live I did was shortly after the the United States had struck Iran, and then Iran struck back. And it was a absolute just clown show. It was theater, no question about that. They, as I mentioned on the last live when I was in Newark yesterday, it was telegraphed well ahead of time. It was like absolutely lame, just so lame. It's hard to even know how to describe their response. So the Iranians telegraphed to Qatar that they would be firing missiles at the Al Udeid Air Base there in Qatar. They also telegraphed it to the United States via a couple of different mediums. The United States was preparing for that for a long time, beforehand, up to 10 days before we were moving our aircraft and stuff out of Al Udeid Air Base. Even Fox News was reporting 30 minutes before the strike that there was a strike imminent. So, like, everybody knew this was going to happen. It was no surprise at all. And Iran fired a, small volley of missiles. They were all shot down but one, and that one landed kind of in an open area. And that was it. And now Iran claimed that they had demolished the base, that they had struck a very hard blow against the aggressors, blah, 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 blah. Of course, nobody with three brain cells to rub together believes that. There's plenty of footage that came out from the base that shows that the base is still standing. There's no damage. And that was it. The US troops were all underground and twiddling their thumbs and waiting this thing out. So nobody was struck at all. And it appears that Iran wanted it to be that way. That they were like, look, this is a face-saving exercise for us. Now, I don't know about you, but I thought we were at war. I thought we were at war. I thought Israel for sure is at war with Iran. The United States was supporting Israel, and then we actually sent our planes into Iran and dropped bombs on Iran. That's an act of war. President Trump tried to immediately declare that the war was over after we sent our planes in there. And Iran obviously couldn't let that go after we destroyed or very badly damaged, at least, their nuclear facilities. So President Trump is, it's, let me just cut to the chase here. It's very obvious to me that President Trump is more concerned about being able to say that he brought peace than he is about actually bringing a lasting peace. He still just either doesn't understand the way that war works. He's not a warrior, and that's fine. I'm not saying he should be, but he certainly doesn't understand the way that the Middle East works. There's no way about that. President Trump tried to just declare the war was over. Iran said, no, we got to get our punch back. Then they fired these missiles at an American base. After President Trump, okay, so let's just back up a little bit. President Trump first said he would be leading the charge to strike Iran if they didn't come to the negotiating table after 60 days. That was untrue. He did not lead the charge. Then President Trump said, okay, unconditional surrender. Do you remember that tweet? Unconditional surrender. Well, what we got was nothing like an unconditional surrender from Iran. So that was untrue. Then we get punch no punchbacks, where President Trump sends in the aircraft, they strike one time, and then that's it. Okay, it's all over. That's it. And that wasn't true because Iran did strike back. But it appears that Iran was working together with the United States in that strike, which is mind-boggling to me. Are they our adversary or not? And President Trump said, if there is any retaliation whatsoever, there will be even greater strikes on Iran. That wasn't true. There weren't bigger strikes on Iran. So when President Trump came out yesterday and unilaterally announced, okay, now there's a ceasefire, we had zero indication that that was going to happen from Iran or from Israel. And I get you get the sense when you look at all the communications going back and forth that everybody went, wait, what the heck? What just happened? First of all, Israel doesn't have any reason to accept a ceasefire because they have the upper hand. They are crushing Iran. They are definitely getting some strikes back for sure. We'll talk more about the strike right at the last minute that killed 5 people in Beersheba. But Israel doesn't have any reason to accept a ceasefire. They don't need a ceasefire. Iran needs a ceasefire. And Donald Trump needs a ceasefire for his Nobel Peace Prize. He is so focused on getting that Nobel Peace Prize. He's got to have his Nobel Peace Prize. It's just his driving force. Even though if you look at the history recently of the Nobel Peace Prize, it's worthless. The Nobel Peace Prize is meaningless. They're giving Nobel Peace Prizes to everybody and their brother, people who had absolutely no reason to get one. So why President Trump is so concerned about getting a Nobel Peace Prize, I don't know. But he is. So he unilaterally announces, okay, now there's a ceasefire. Both parties have agreed. And immediately Iran comes out and says, we didn't agree to a ceasefire. I mean, there are tweets from the Iranian regime saying, Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. We did not agree to a ceasefire. And Trump said, oh, yes, you did. And it goes into effect. And this is it, like the story kept changing. The ceasefire goes into effect in 6 hours for Iran and in 12 hours for Israel. What? Okay, whatever. Now, Israel tried to put a brave face on it, and Benjamin Netanyahu came out and made a statement that says, okay, And somebody's asking, am I turning into Candace? How in the world am I turning into Candace? I support Israel. So I guess that would be a no, right? So, I look, I'm not trying to bash Trump. I'm just confused here because we're not getting any kind of consistent messaging from anybody. Gadriel says, I'm not sure you want peace, Chuck. Listen, anybody who has seen as much war as I have definitely wants peace. But there's a difference between peace that comes through losing and a lasting peace that comes through defeating the aggressors, defeating the enemy. And I understand that there's a difference. Peace for its own sake is not worth having. I talked about this in a post that I made on my locals page over at chuckholton.com. And I want to turn over to that for just a minute so that we can discuss that. Look, the Pope came out and said, he quote, war does not solve problems. On the contrary, it amplifies them and inflicts deep wounds on the history of peoples, which take generations to heal. No armed victory can compensate for the pain of mothers, the fear of children, or stolen futures. Now, that's a nice sentiment, but it does not reflect any kind of moral clarity uh, at all. I mean, this is the man who's supposed to be speaking for Christ. Christ did not say that, war does not solve problems. Matter of fact, when uh, centurions came to Christ, he told them to deal fairly with people. He didn't tell them to lay down their arms. He told them to deal fairly with people. When the disciples came to Jesus and said, we have 3 cloaks and 1 sword or 2, he said, okay, that's enough. I'm not saying that Christ was a man of war, but he was a man of violence at times. He used righteous violence, turning over tables in the temple. And that was a moral thing to do. That was a moral use of violence. Now, war is very ugly and very destructive and very costly, and it does cause a terrible amount of pain for many innocent people. And that is horrible, horrible. Again, I've seen more war than most people alive on planet Earth today. I've been covering war. I was in war when I was a soldier, and then I became a war correspondent, and I've been covering war for 22 years. And I'm reminded of this quote from John Stuart Mill that I memorized as a young ranger. And it goes like this: war is an ugly thing, but it's not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling, which thinks that nothing is worth war, is much worse. A man who has nothing for which he is willing to fight, nothing he cares more about than his own personal safety, is a miserable creature who can never be free unless made and kept so by the exertions of better men than himself. Folks, what it comes down to is that if you value freedom, then war is a necessary evil to maintain freedom. And history bears that out. If you look at World War II, is the Pope saying that the United States should not have defeated Nazi Germany? We would all be speaking German now, I guess, or Japanese. Do you think the United States should not have defended itself after Pearl Harbor? Do you think that the United States should not have gone to war to end slavery in the Civil War? Do you think the United States should not have uh, gone to war in Afghanistan after 9/11? I mean, there's example after example after example that shows that actually war is worth it when it's for a righteous cause. Fighting for righteousness is not only good, but it's a duty that good people have. Now, I mean, obviously, peace is better than war, but peace that's brought through capitulation, through surrender to evil, surrendering to evil can bring peace, but it's a peace that can coexist with hatred. Peace that's brought through an evil, violent regime, oppression, that's called oppression, right? It's a lack of freedom. What's better is to overcome hate with justice. When justice comes, it brings peace in the bargain. But justice is a form of love. And love conquers hate. When you have justice, then hatred can't coexist with that. So we should never glorify war. We should never want war. But we should desire justice more than we desire peace. That's all I've got to say about that. Now, going back to President Trump. President Trump desires peace. Apparently, I mean, looking at his tweets here, he desires peace more than he desires justice. And that's a big problem, folks. So he thinks that he can just unilaterally declare a ceasefire and make it stick. Well, what happened? Israel was in the process of, I mean, they were already on their way to drop bombs on Israel when President Trump declared this ceasefire. They were in motion. And so they made one very large strike on Tehran after President Trump declared the ceasefire, but before the ceasefire was slated to go into effect. They dropped a lot of bombs on Tehran before the ceasefire was slated to go into effect. Iran fired another 2 salvos of missiles before the ceasefire went into effect. One of those missiles struck an apartment building in Beersheba, and even though a family was in their bomb shelter, it received a direct hit from that missile and killed 5 people. That brings the grand total of deaths because of this conflict in Israel to 30. Okay, there had 24 that were killed before. There was 1 woman that had a heart attack, and now 5 more. So 30 total people. Israel yesterday alone probably killed 1,000 IRGC soldiers at a base that they struck in Iran. So the death toll in Iran was definitely much higher. Even though Iran was aiming at civilian built-up areas where innocent civilians were, Israel was aiming at military targets only. Military, nuclear, and government targets. So then when after the ceasefire went into effect, Iran fired another missile which struck up in Haifa. Now, it didn't destroy anything of consequence. It didn't kill anybody, but the Israelis are pretty salty about the strike that happened in Beersheba. I'll just show you a quick look at that. This is the apartment building that was struck in Beersheba. You can see this was a very large missile, probably one of the 2,000, Yeah, 2,000 kilograms of explosives. It destroyed that apartment building and a bunch of cars in front of it. Okay, so the Israelis are pretty upset about that. Israel Katz came out after that Beersheba attack and said there will be a heavy response to this. President Trump was not happy about that. He put a post out on Truth Social that said the ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Like, why does he have to sign his own tweets? It says, like right there, President Trump. It says up above your message, Donald J. Trump. You don't have to sign it. It's like I joke around with my kids whenever I send them a message and I say, "Hey, this is Dad." Like they're like, "Dad, we know it's you because it says it's you right there." Anyway, President Trump was not happy with Israel or Iran. Thank you, Daniel. Very kind of you. And yes, folks, please make sure you hit the like button on this post. I know you need a reminder. There's your reminder. And tell me where you're watching from if you haven't already in the chat. I'd like to go through that after the live is over and see where everybody was coming in from. That's really cool. So I have the video of President Trump responding to a reporter at the White House. He was just about to go get on his helicopter to go to the NATO summit where he wants to be able to thump his chest and say, I brought peace in the Middle East. And it wasn't working out so well because the two parties were still at each other. It was like the shortest ceasefire ever. That lasted like 12 minutes before Iran fired another missile. Now, Israel did strike back with one strike after Iran's breaking of the ceasefire. Iran, for their part, said, we didn't fire any missile. Well, we're not that stupid. Israel has the ability to track your missiles, Iran. They know that the missile came from you. I mean, it's like it didn't just appear out of thin air. So President Trump was very unhappy with both Iran and Israel. Now, I have the video of his answer, and I'm going to play it, but I'm going to warn you ahead of time. The president drops an F-bomb at the end of the answer. And I didn't have time to bleep it out. I would have edited it for those of you who are sensitive, have sensitive ears. Let me just say, I think it's very crass when our leaders use vulgar language. I think that our leaders should be above that. They should be emulable. And, if you talk that way in private, okay, that's fine. I've been known to turn the air blue once or twice when I smacked my thumb with a hammer or something like that. And, we're all adults here. So I don't agree with this kind of language. I try not to use that language in my everyday life, or especially in my professional life, because I think it's crass. And I think it's, look, there is a time and place for every word, and words mean things. And when you use profane or vulgar language, I think that it just shows a lack of ability to express yourself intelligently. It shows that you're being controlled by emotion. And so I try not to use language like that. So I definitely don't agree with it, but I'm going to go ahead and play it for you here. So if your children are listening, you might want to send them in the other room, just so they won't be exposed to this. I never liked for my children to be exposed to language like that, but especially from the President of the United States. But I do want to play it for you because I think it's important to hear his answer and to hear that he's more upset with Israel for striking Iran before the ceasefire went into effect than he is upset with Iran for striking Israel after the ceasefire went into effect and for striking and killing 5 innocent Israelis. Thank you, Linda. Very kind of you. So, anyway, here's what President Trump said. And again, right at the end of this, he drops an F bomb. So just be, I'm sorry. I would have bleeped it out, but I didn't have time.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Mic drop from President Trump. There, he says that that Israel and Iran have been fighting each other so long that they don't know what the F they're doing. I'm not sure what that exactly means. What I think what it means is that President Trump's having a bad morning. He's not happy that his attempt to just declare the war over isn't working. But as you've heard me say for a long time, you don't get to do that. You don't get to just declare the war over. The only way you can correctly end a war is to make your enemy beg you to stop and unconditionally surrender. And when he tweeted unconditional surrender, that was the right thing to tweet. That was correct. And what's really sad is that we could have done it. Israel could have done it. Now, Israel came out and tried very hard to go along with what President Trump said. I'm looking here for the text of what Netanyahu said about the ceasefire. I've got it here in my notes. Okay, so here's what Netanyahu said. Oh, no, that's not it. Okay, here's what he said. He convened his cabinet with the Minister of Defense and says that Israel had achieved all the objectives of Operation Rising Lion and much more. Israel has removed a dual immediate existential threat, both in the nuclear field and the field of ballistic missiles. In addition, the IDF achieved complete air control over the skies of Tehran, inflicted severe damage on the military leadership, destroyed dozens of central Iranian government targets. In the past 24 hours, the IDF has also severely struck government targets in the heart of Tehran, eliminating hundreds of Basij operatives. That's the terrorist regime's suppression mechanism that it was in the process, was busy striking at was busy oppressing their people. And in light of the achievement of the operation's objectives and in full coordination with President Trump, Israel agreed to the president's proposal for a bilateral ceasefire. Israel will respond forcefully to any violation of the ceasefire. Israeli citizens must continue to adhere to Home Front Command instructions. Our hearts go out to the families who lost loved ones and send wishes for a full recovery for the injured. In the Operation Rising Lion, the state of Israel achieved great historical achievements and placed itself on a par with the world powers. This is a tremendous success for the people of Israel and its fighters who removed the two existential threats to our state and ensured the eternity of Israel. Okay, so that was the statement they put out. Now, before I go any further, folks, I need to mention our sponsor again, Preserve Gold. Listen, you've probably seen all the headlines about, uncertainty in the Middle East is kind of the least of our worries. We've got plenty of uncertainty here at home. The tariffs that President Trump has put in place, there are economic experts saying that could cause a potential recession. And let's be honest, whether or not the United States goes into a massive recession is not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. We have more than $37 trillion in national debt and about $220 trillion of unfunded liabilities, which should be part of the national debt, but they sweep it under the rug. Social Security Trust Fund is a bunch of IOUs at this point. So the government's having to make some big changes, cutting the budget, trying to lower taxes and impose tariffs to make up the difference. Those changes might help in the short term. I'm sorry, in the long term, but you could feel some economic pain in the short term if you're not already. And if you're watching your 401k turn into a 201k or a 101k, as a lot of people are, you might already be feeling that recession. So in times like that, I think it's important for all of us, especially if you're the man of your house, to lead and think long term to protect your family. Now, one of the ways I do that is by investing in real assets like gold and silver. And I want a company that I can trust that doesn't have a bunch of gimmicks, that's not going to spam the heck out of me every time. If I do business with them once, they're going to send me 9 million messages. That's why I trust Preserve Gold. They help patriotic Americans like us move money into real assets like gold and silver that have stood the test of time. So go to preservegold.com/hotzone right now, get their free info kit, and learn how to protect your retirement with real wealth. That's preservegold.com. And again, you can text 50505 to, I'm sorry, I did that. I keep doing that backwards. Text the word Chuck to 50505, and they'll send you a free wealth preservation kit. And you could get up to $15,000 in free gold and silver if you qualify by rolling over an IRA. They can help you get physical gold, or they can help you roll over your IRA into a gold IRA. Either way, you should definitely check them out. Thank you to our sponsors for sponsoring the podcast. Okay, so long and the short of it is, Trump is begging Israel and Iran not to violate the ceasefire. Israel is saying, well, okay, if we're going to have a ceasefire, we feel like we've accomplished most of our objectives. I'm not sure I agree with that, because they have not completely destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities or their program. Iran is the regime is still in power. So Iran is saying, we are going to rebuild it. We're going to restart our nuclear program. Now, they've definitely been set back a few years. There's no question about that. Their missiles, they still have at least 1,000 missiles, according to Israel, that could reach Israel. But they have taken real big hits to their launcher stock. So they probably are down to maybe 150 launchers or 170 launchers, something like that. They're not going to be able to rebuild their launchers anytime soon, very quickly, and get a lot more, but they still have the ability to threaten Israel. They still have the ability to threaten U.S. bases in the region. There were 3 bases in Iraq that were struck overnight. I think it was Taji, Victory, and one other camp there. Now, those are bases that I don't believe have any U.S. forces on them, but they were struck by suicide munitions, and nobody has taken credit for those suicide munitions yet. But it's very likely that they came from, at the very least, Iranian backed militias in Iraq. No word on injuries or deaths, but there was some damage. Those are bases that were built by the United States, but we don't have any forces there as far as I know. So there's still violence happening around there. We still have troops in harm's way. Israel has suffered about 45 strikes. So just that there were more than 500 missiles launched at Israel over the past couple of weeks. The interception rate is, according to reports, 83%. The direct hit rate is only 6%. The additional 11% are missiles that were not intercepted because they were falling in open areas. So the 6% is the number that is important. But if they're shooting 500 missiles at Israel and only 6% of them get through and strike at important sites, that's not materially damaging Israeli ability to do anything, especially since they're striking at civilian targets. So Iran's strikes on Israel, while tragic, and they put thousands of people out of their homes for a temporary period of time while their homes get rebuilt or renovated. The cost to Iran was staggering, absolutely staggering. Hundreds of launcher. I mean, obviously, Iran fired 500 missiles at Israel and thousands of drones, well over 1,000 drones. Many of those were shot down before they even got to Israeli airspace by Jordanian pilots, American pilots, Israeli pilots, and Saudi pilots, or were shot down by missiles from ships out in the Gulf or Iron Dome missiles. Okay, so this was far more costly on Iran, all told, than it was on Israel, because Israel dropped more than 1,000 munitions on Iran as well. The only difference is all of them struck their targets. Iran was unable to shoot down anything. They didn't shoot down anything except one drone throughout this entire thing. Now, the Iranians planned to fire 1,000 missiles at once at the beginning of the war. And they barely made it to 1,000 missiles over almost 2 weeks. Now, so this is a great victory on the part of Israel, without a doubt, even though about 30 civilians lost their lives, and that's tragic. And 0 IDF lost their lives in this conflict with Iran due to Iranian strikes or anything. But the nuclear threat that was looming over the whole region is largely gone, at least for the time being. However, we still don't know where Iran's nuclear material went. Iran is now, they basically are not going to allow the IAEA to come in and inspect anymore, or at least until they are, talked into it through diplomatic negotiations. It's we're at a point where you could say they were about 80% there, I'd say. They were about 80% to completely dismantling the threat. But now, by agreeing to a ceasefire, by President Trump announcing a ceasefire, what it looks like is that all we've done is we have ensured that this threat is going to continue for the time being. Now, it's much reduced, no question. The threat has been reduced a lot, but it's not been eliminated. The only way to eliminate the threat would be to eliminate the regime that built the threat. Now that regime looks like it will survive. It's been handed a lifeline. And I wonder how much of the president's conversations with people like Vladimir Putin and Qatar have influenced his desire to really clamp down on Israel more than Iran. I mean, President Trump feels like he should be able to tell Israel what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. And Israelis, while they support President Trump, they're grateful to President Trump, they're still a sovereign country. And Israel needs to have the ability to continue to strike to protect itself. And so I think what you will see in the coming days is that Israel is going to continue to fly sorties over Iran. They're not going to strike anything unless they have to. But if they determine that, oh gosh, there are launchers that are being prepared to fire at Israel, they will strike those launchers. And that's the strike that Israel did that President Trump was so angry about, which was before the ceasefire went into effect. Part of that strike was Israel destroying 8 launchers that were preparing to launch rockets at Israel. I don't understand how you could be mad about that. Israel has the right to defend itself. And President Trump himself has said that many times. But he said so many things and so many contradictory things and so many things that he said was going to happen that didn't happen. It's frustrating for somebody who supports President Trump to look at that and go, I don't know what I can believe from President Trump anymore, because he just says stuff. And that's unfortunate. That's a tough thing to take for, I think, a lot of Americans right now. Okay, let's answer some questions. Chuck, do you think China came in and took Iran's materials before we got there to bomb Fordo? Yes, I do. I said that back when we saw those Chinese planes coming in and picking stuff up or dropping stuff off. We don't know. Those Chinese planes were coming and going from Iran during the conflict. And I said, they're taking something out of there. I think they transported the uranium that was 60% enriched out of Iran. If they didn't, then Iran distributed that material around their country and hid it in places. Some of it might have been destroyed, but likely much of it is still out there. And I have a sinking feeling in my gut that we will be seeing that highly enriched uranium again sometime, at some point. Sharon Whitley says Trump is being called taco. Trump always chickens out. Is it fair? I don't think it's fair. It's become a running joke. Trump always chickens out because he just says that he's going to do stuff and then he doesn't follow up. He doesn't do it. He's given Israel. He's given Russia 3 2-week deadlines, and those 2 weeks come and go. Russia doesn't do what Trump wants, and nothing happens. So this is what I'm saying. It's just frustrating for those of us who support President Trump to see him continue to talk like this and not back it up. Ginger Indiana says, how come Mossad didn't see where the trucks were going out of Fordo? That's a real good question. I guess they didn't have surveillance over Fordo, which would be egregious. Why didn't they? I don't know. I don't know why they didn't follow those trucks and destroy those trucks if they saw them taking things out of Fordo. It was a lot of trucks. I mean, the images that came out, somebody was watching it because we have images of the trucks at Fordo. Why didn't they follow those things? Maybe they did and they're just not telling us. Let's hope. Daniel Reynolds says, can you remind people to like this video? There are 2,000 people watching and only 71 likes. I see 1,335 likes. But yes, please make sure you like the video, folks. It does go a long way to supporting the channel and helping it grow. Carrie says, I think one soldier died during the last salvos of missiles from Iran. I have not seen that report. Going back, let's see here. President Trump is going to a NATO summit, and I think he just really, really, really wanted to be able to say that he had brought peace in the Middle East. And so he just announced it. Okay, we're going to have peace now. But I think that's not going to go so well if the actual people fighting didn't even know about it before you announced it. Do you believe Israel will allow the survival of the Ayatollah regime in Iran, or will they continue their military effort until regime change? They have said, they've come out and said that they are going to stop now. Unless Iran keeps shooting, then they will continue to shoot back. Now, whether or not the Mossad causes the Ayatollah to experience a sudden rapid disassembly at some point, like they did with Ismail Haniyeh, it remains to be seen. Whether they continue to, cause things to just spontaneously combust inside Iran without actually taking airplanes over there, things that they could maintain some rudimentary form of plausible deniability. I wouldn't put that past. I mean, I wouldn't say that the Mossad wouldn't do that. I think the Mossad would do that. Why does Israel have to beg to protect themselves? Sharon asks. Yeah, that's pretty sad, isn't it? Just going back here to look for any other questions. Who's left in charge making decisions for the IRGC? Did they get an auto pen? No, what they did was just immediately promoted people who were lower down. And, they just, as the top brass got taken out, that just created upward mobility for people that were lower down. And I understand President Trump talking about regime change. Like, I think he's right about this. And people asked President Trump, are you for regime change? He said, no, not really, because we don't know what we get after regime change. However, I mean, I think if you look at that logically and you say, well, in this case, a bird in the bush might be better than two in the hand. What I mean is, we know the guy that's in charge is a homicidal maniac. So the argument that if we take him out, we might get a more homicidal maniac is kind of dumb. It kind of falls flat because that's like saying, well, we should abort all babies because some babies might suffer when if they're allowed to be born. That's a real logical fallacy. And I think it's also a logical fallacy to just assume that whoever's going to take charge after the current regime falls is going to be worse. He could be better. We don't know. Reza Pahlavi, the crown prince, is, garnering support for an actual democratic regime in Iran after the current one falls. Mike Silva says, what effects does this have, if any, on the war in Ukraine? Well, it might. It's not going to have much. I don't think it'll have much, other than the United States showed Russia and China the other day that their weapons are no match for American weapons. That strike on Fordo was very, very positive for deterrence, because China's weaponry is very much like Iran's weapons. China's air defense radars, very similar to Iranian air defense radars. Russia, too. Even their most advanced stuff could not and did not shoot down any American planes or even see them. So that's a plus. You know, we upped our deterrence against shenanigans, right, by doing that. So Mike Silva says, I wonder who's actually making the decisions in Iran. Well, we know that the supreme leader has already designated successors in case he doesn't make it. And we know he's not in very good health. Conrad asks, do you believe Israel will allow the survival of the Ayatollah regime in Iran? Well, I already answered that one. Don't. Okay. So I think we need to continue to pray for President Trump. How much damage was done to Fordo? We don't know. That's part of the problem. Colonel Oz, thank you very much, says, or Kamal Oz, Trump is more Neville Chamberlain than Churchill. Just as he abandoned the Kurds in their battle with the Islamo-terrorist Erdogan, he saved the regime. I can't disagree with that. Question, possible dangerous threats are going on in the U.S. that Trump is trying to keep from happening by the actions he's taking. Well, if that's the case, then I'm even more disappointed. Because for Trump to capitulate to the Iranian regime because he's afraid of potentially of, some sort of sleeper cell attacks in the United States would be a very cowardly move. I don't think that's what he did. But if that's what he did, that would be very cowardly. When are you running for president? Ellen asks. Nope. There's not enough Secret Service to protect me from my wife if I ran for president. I'm not going to do that. Question, if this regime is ousted, don't you believe it wouldn't be long before another rises up as it has since the beginning of time? Well, it might, but it also might not. And as I keep saying, we should not be afraid of regime change. We should just say, if the regime you have is a threat to America, then we will come in and remove it, and we will reboot your country for you. Then you can rebuild it any way you want. We don't care. We're not going to send the State Department to try to form a parliamentary system or a Jeffersonian democracy. We will just let you rebuild your country any way you want. And if you become a threat to us again, then you can expect to see B-2 bombers, or not see them, flying over your country once again to reboot your country again. And we'll just keep rebooting your country until you get it right. We're not going to be in the business of regime building or nation building. We're just going to be in the business of nation rebooting. So we'll be your best friend or your worst enemy. Up to you. Take your pick. That, I believe, would be the right foreign policy message. Why does no one seem like they're worried about missing 400 kilograms of enriched uranium? I'm worried about it. I'm definitely worried about it. That's a big problem. Huge problem. Is it possible the IRGC clashes with the Ayatollah? Well, I don't know about the IRGC. The military would be more likely, because the IRGC is not the military in Iran. They have their army over here, the Iranian army, and then they have the IRGC is separate. Think of it like the German army as opposed to the SS or something like that. The IRGC is more outwardly focused. So the actual army might turn on the Ayatollah, but that's one of the reasons why they have the IRGC, to keep that from happening. Question, is it possible that Trump's reaction is part of a psychological tactic, like good cop, bad cop? I guess it's possible, but I just wish that he would just follow through on what he says. If he says he's going to do something, I wish he would do it. Is there a chance the Prince of Iran returns in the event of a regime change? Yes, there's a good chance of that happening. Do you think in the future, if Israel's Mossad has a chance to eliminate the Ayatollah, they will do it? Yes, I think they would if they had a chance. Khamenei might have dementia? Yes, he might. Has the IRGC historically been battle tested? Not really, other than just creating shenanigans around the world, which is not really battle. Terrorism is a cowardly way of war. And that's what the IRGC has been good at, was terrorism. Is Putin still dependent on Iran drones? Robert, good question. No, he's not. Putin has been using Iranian technology to build those drones in Russia for more than a year now, a couple of years. And so I missed your second super chat. Sorry about that, Colonel Kemal. Did you ask a question? If so, ask it again. But we're coming down to the end here. Do you think Iran ultimately will lose the Strait of Hormuz? No, because they have so much waterfront along the Strait of Hormuz, it'd be very hard for them to lose it. Can anyone tell me if the Iron Dome was critically damaged? It was not. Chuck has major Trump derangement syndrome. No, actually, I don't. Like I say, I support President Trump. I just wish he would be a man of his word. I just wish he'd do what he says he's going to do. That's all. I'm disappointed in President Trump, but I still support him, and I'm still very glad he's our president, because the alternative was unthinkable. Did Israel allow October 7th to happen to get support from their people to destroy Gaza? No. That's a stupid conspiracy theory. Unbelievably stupid conspiracy theory. I was in Israel 2 days after the attack, and I can tell you that was not Israel allowing it to happen. Israel would not have allowed that to happen. They were just their own hubris allowed it to happen. Kemal says Trump is soft on Ortega in Nicaragua and Maduro in Venezuela. Yes, that's true. Two regimes tied to Iran. He keeps extending waivers for Chevron in Venezuela. That's true. And it's unfortunate. We should take a much harder stance on Venezuela than we have. Question, what can Israel do to protect itself better in the future? Well, build up its defenses, I guess, because they are, and they will. Israel is not going to go back to a pre-October 7th mindset anytime soon. They have established extremely deep intel networks inside Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Yemen, etc. And they're going to exploit those to the maximum extent possible. So they're going to use that to protect themselves in the future. What do I mean by hubris? I mean pride, Chrissy. Israel was attacked on October 7th because they were so proud they did not believe that they could be attacked that way. There were lots of indicators, and they ignored them because they said, no, we're way too good. These little brown people in Gaza, they couldn't do that to us because we're too good. We've got such good technology. There's no way. They were more worried about an attack coming from the north, and so they had moved almost all of their troops to the north, which was right at the wrong time. It was terrible. That's what allowed it to happen, was their pride. That's what allowed them to be attacked in 1967. That's what allowed them to be attacked in 1973. Pride, pride, pride. Pride is a huge problem for Jews. Jews have a massive superiority complex. They truly believe they're better than everybody else. And that's unfortunate, but all you have to do is go live there for a while and you'll see what I mean. And I'm sorry to say that. It pains me to say that, but I'm just telling you the truth. I support Israel, but Israelis are an extremely proud people. Thank you for keeping us informed, and many experts, good or bad, blah, blah, blah. Question, I'm sorry I'm late. I just want to know if my suspicion is correct that Israel and Iran do not agree to the ceasefire in the first place. Apparently not, because they still struck each other after the ceasefire happened. President Trump is very upset about that, so he's trying to force them into this ceasefire. Let's see how well he does at that. Okay. All right, that's all I've got, folks. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. Again, make sure that you go to chuckholton.com if you want to support the podcast. You go become a supporter over there. You get a lot of extra content and that sort of thing. Make sure that you are subscribed here on YouTube as well so that you can get notified before we go live. And I'll be here in West Virginia for a week or so. We're here for a wedding. So I'll be on again whenever there's something to report. God bless you. Thank you, Kamal. Appreciate it. Why did Trump encourage China to buy Iranian oil? That's a good question. President Trump encouraging Iran to sell its oil is encouraging Iran to rebuild its nuclear program and its terror proxies, because that's where Iran gets its money to do those things. So that was, again, one of these statements you just go like, oh, why? Okay. God bless you.